Good afternoon. I'm here to tell you all a story about a relationship you never knew you had. This is a problematic relationship, which has evolved from diminishing emotions and general misunderstandings. This toxic affair is between you and the current state of architecture. Design once moved us. Architecture was involved with a sense of spiritual satisfaction and wonder. It touched us with a sense of beauty, intimacy, and memory, and offered us an emotional platform through which we could better understand the human collective to which we all belong. Now, whether it ever really achieved this or not is not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to outline 3 reasons why architecture is not currently reaching this plateau, and what we can do as a society to realign our thinking with these more humanistic principles. The first was a transformation that happened at the end of the 17th century, when scientific thinking rejected the interpretive and non-tangible aspects of architecture, resulting in buildings that were no longer concerned with their relationship to humanity. It's as if buildings became their own individual objects, having little or no interest with the people they contained. Things that could no longer be measured lost their place within the role of design, and many of the existential factors which influenced the creation of our societies lost traction as we adopted the Cartesian grid as our new architectural Bible. As a result, the practice of design was transformed into a technological science focused on optimization, low cost, and efficiency. And although these are important principles that should influence the design of architecture, we may be placing too much emphasis on these, because buildings that once looked like this have started looking like this. The second is the development of an urban culture rooted within privatization and individualism. Up until the 18th century, life occurred within the public realm as a form of relaxation, enjoyment, and social engagement. People enjoyed being on the streets, and it was the place where one felt connected to the greater social establishment that constituted their society. We now see the public through a different set of eyes. It's a place of transition between the places we are and the places we want to be. We treat those who stand in our way as obstacles, and as we hurdle over our fellow citizens, we make sure that our thoughts, eyes, and bodies never meet. Being in public is no longer desirable, and architecture has started reflecting these principles, creating exclusively private spaces. Architecture used to engage the social complexities of society, but as we've shifted away from the public realm, architecture that looked like this started feeling like this. The third is the commodification of architecture into a mode of branding. As architecture entered the service industry, it became a marketing strategy, and in so doing eliminated the potential for genuine emotions in response to creative design solutions. Consider, for instance, the design of fast food chains. Hundreds of identical buildings spread across the world resemble products more than they do the creation of our societies. We preserve beautiful historic architecture because rooted within its construction are the values and principles of that specific time period. We as a society invested in architecture, and with that investment came character and identity of some of the major cities of today. If we were to consider ourselves as part of an elite historical preservation team of the future, would we consider what we're building today worthy of preserving? I think mostly not. And I think it's because buildings that felt like this are being processed like this. Now, design is typically grounded within design principles, And I think if we were to expand our list to include the following three, we could once again reinvigorate architecture, alleviating the negative effects of some of the previously mentioned movements. The first is the consideration of architecture as a story. We love stories. Stories engage us. They make us think, and best of all, they make us imagine. If we reflect back to grade school English class, we might remember a chart that looks like this. This is a graphic illustration of a narrative structure, a series of incidents, obstacles, and even disasters formulate a tension leading to a high point, creating a climactic experience. In much the same way, architecture can take us along for a ride should we choose to design it to do so. Much like a story, architecture has an introduction. Today, we came off of Bay Street and we were brought into a large reception area that took us into a stairwell. We were introduced to the building as artifacts on the walls reflected the building's history, and as we continued up the steps, we were introduced to the building's past. This massive area is the heart of the narrative. It's where we'll spend most of our day and where a series of incidents, obstacles, and disasters could lead to something amazing and climactic. The conclusion of our architectural story will be in a place we have not yet visited. The space is bright, engaging, and offers us the opportunity to end our evening through social engagement, concluding our architectural story. Now, although this building wasn't created with the purposes of telling an architectural story, the way we experience it is much like a story. And I think if we were to adopt the telling of narratives as fundamental design principles, we could once again reinvigorate buildings so that they can be worthy of exploring. The next is the consideration of architecture as an emotional relationship. I'd like everybody to consider a time in their childhood when a space affected you so strongly that all other thoughts in your mind disappeared completely. As children, it was easier to immerse ourselves with an experience because as we were growing up, there was so much unknown. Buildings affected us emotionally, and the relationship between us and the built world was dynamic and exciting. Now, as we understood the world more and more, architecture challenged us less and less. And although it can be tempting to blame the natural process of learning as being the reason for the loss of mystery, I think the wildly underwhelming state of architectural experience may be more to blame than we may realize. Julio Bermudez from the Catholic University of America conducted a research study where over 1,000 participants were asked to describe their most intimate architectural experience. More than half of the responses included the word emotional. So, if our most intimate architectural experience is described as emotional, why are we choosing not to design to attain it? I believe if we were to consider architecture as an emotional relationship, we could once again rekindle the flame of architectural modern society. The third is the consideration of architecture as a piece of craft. Modernism looked to reduce the unessential aspects of architecture, but taking these reductionist principles and pushing them to absurdity has sterilized architecture from a design process that fosters character. We often see sleek modernist buildings that hide all details so that the pure form of the building is uncompromised by the joints that create it. Now, this type of thinking undermines the potential aesthetic beauty that comes with a beautiful material assembly. If you think back to a time when you came across an item whose pieces came together in such a unique way that it almost seemed poetic. I would like to see the same from our architecture. To give you an example, I've put together a few details here that come together either through interlocking, puncturing, tightening, or clamping. The accentuation of each of these pieces visualizes the inner workings of the detail, and in so doing, allow a relationship between the person viewing the architecture and the architecture itself. I'd like to conclude my talk with the proposal of a challenge for the audience. As leaders of tomorrow, it will be us to define the future of architectural ambition. Although it can be tempting to believe, architects alone are not the only ones who decide how our buildings will be built. The general public has a huge influence on the decisions that lead to the creation of our societies. My challenge for the audience is to consider yourself part of the architectural movement. Starting right now, I challenge you to mentally equip yourself so that when you are given the opportunity to play a part in the creation of our cities, you can be confident that your decision will lead to a positive influence in our future architecture. Thank you.